Most people think $100,000 a year salary should feel comfortable, especially in the richest city in the world. But in New York City, in 2026, that number often feels like just barely scraping by. So, why does six figures feel like middle class at best, and sometimes even lower middle class? Today, we are going to unpack exactly why that is with real numbers, real cost comparisons, and the hidden economics that make New York so expensive. New York's economy is enormous. The entire metro area produces over 2 trillion a year in economic output, bigger than some countries. But absolute wealth doesn't tell you how money is distributed among people. In fact, median incomes here tell a very different story than the headlines about high wages. The median household income in New York City is around $81,200 as of late 2025, which is slightly above the US median, but nowhere near the high costs most residents face every month. And that doesn't account for how many single adults live here on their own, which skews the lived reality even further. A lot of 100,000 a year salaries might go to two earner households, while single earners make much less. So you hear about six figures a lot in New York City, but the median tells a completely different story. Most people are earning far less than that. Now, let's talk about housing, the biggest financial pressure for most people. According to 2025 rental data, citywide median asking rent in New York City is about $3,600 per month, and that's just the midpoint, not a luxury listing. That's about 55% of a typical household's income, way above the standard 30% rent to income rule. To put that in perspective, if you earn 100K a year, that means anywhere from 43 to $48,000 a year could go just toward rent. And that's before utilities, food, transport, healthcare, and taxes. It gets more dramatic though. In the Bronx, rents have jumped over 60% since 2019 and now eat up about 82% of typical household income. In Brooklyn, the rent to income ratio is around 60%, while in Manhattan, it's about 57%. That makes normal living almost completely unaffordable on anything less than a very, very high salary. If you look at average rents, not just medians, 2025 estimates show typical New York City rents around 3,500 to 4,000 plus per month, which would require a yearly income of 150K a year just to keep the rent under 30% of your income. To put it another way, at $4,000 per month rent, your rent budget alone equals what most New Yorkers earn before taxes. And that's not even including other living costs. New York City is about 27 to 38% more expensive overall compared to the US average. Housing costs are between 78 and 224% higher than the US average, depending on the metric. Groceries, utilities, transport, and healthcare all run well above national rates too. This means your 100K a year paycheck buys a lot less than the same salary would in most other US cities. Here's the paradox: even people making more than the median wage can still struggle in New York City because expenses grow faster than salaries. Rent and housing costs keep rising year after year, while income growth doesn't keep pace at all. You can have a 100K a year salary, but if rent alone is more than 40K a year, you still feel stretched every month. The reality of what most New Yorkers face today is that in 2026, roughly 70% of New York households are renters, meaning most people are locked into high rent costs rather than building equity. And because of this pressure, even many well paid people end up sacrificing. They either rent smaller apartments or have multiple roommates. A lot of them settle for long commutes so they can save on rent. Most of them have to sacrifice savings and home ownership. That's why $100,000 a year salary can feel like a baseline for survival rather than a ticket to comfort. So, what's the takeaway here? Making six figures in New York doesn't guarantee financial comfort because the cost structure of the city has outpaced typical incomes, especially in housing. New York's economy may be one of the largest on earth, but personal prosperity remains elusive for most residents. High salaries are meaningless if your basic costs eat them alive, and New York today might be the best example of that. If you would like to see more videos like this, where I talk about city living, finances, housing, and other interesting topics, consider liking the video and subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. Thanks for watching.